Welcome. You're listening to Beyond the Front Door podcast with Lindee and Rhea at Peak Properties. And we are real estate agents here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And we bring you stories that make you laugh, cry, cringe, inform you, all the things. So come on in. We put the real in real estate.
Yeah. So, for all of our guests listening, we would like to introduce Ward Anderson from Jonah Bank. Thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
We have some fun questions for Ward today. And so, but before we get started, one of the things that we would like you to do is just talk a little bit about yourself. Were you born in Cheyenne? Did you grow up here? Tell us a little bit about your family and how.
No, unfortunately, I am not a native of Wyoming. I am a greenie transplant. However,
Just kidding.
I will claim that I did grow up in Wyoming. I grew up every summer. My family, we raised and trained quarter horses, and we used to go from Rock Springs to Casper to Gillette racing horses.
Okay.
And so I spent every summer in Wyoming, and then I also am a Moorcroft wolf. I went to junior high school in Moorcroft, Wyoming, and lived in Moorcroft for 3 years. So while I may not have been born and raised in Wyoming, I've spent a lot of time, and I do have some roots in Wyoming. So,
well, Lindee and I are both from Gillette, so we're well familiar with
With
Moorcroft.
Moorcroft, yes, we are.
yes.
And Moorcroft Jubilee days.
Yes,
We cannot forget about Moorcroft Jubilee days.
Yes.
Still going strong to this day.
So, and my other tie was I served in what used to be the 1022nd, which was the medevac unit's name prior to the new designation. The Blackhawks that you see flying around, that the hangars out on the Air Force Base, we used to be in the hangars that are right up on the airport. And I served in the 1022nd when we deployed during the first Gulf War in 1991, and had some very, very close friends through being a part of that unit, and loved being in Cheyenne. And when my wife and I had our first child in northern Colorado, it had changed a lot and wasn't the kind of lifestyle we wanted our kids to grow up with. And my wife is a dental hygienist here, and she went to LCCC through their dental hygiene program. And she, driving up from Fort Collins every day for school, she just hated the wind. She's like, oh my God, I'll never live in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And lo and behold, we happened to find a place out north of town. And I said, honey, we gotta go look at this place. And she thought I'd lost my mind. But it was a way for us to allow our kids to grow up with more what we grew up. Back in the day, northern Colorado was very similar to what Cheyenne is like today.
Right.
It really was the kind of environment that we enjoyed, but it has changed so much that we wanted to be able to offer that to our kids as they got a chance to grow up. And so we've lived here over 20 years, so not a native, but I have some roots and
For sure.
a long history here in Wyoming.
Well, I was thinking, we've joked a little bit about how I think when they were drawing state lines, somebody figured out where the wind started. And
Exactly.
said,
How did they?
So
They did.
We don't want this in Colorado, so
Right.
here's where Wyoming starts. Although Wellington, I do feel like is a little windy.
Well, and that's where I grew up.
Oh,
was
it's in
north
Wellington.
of Wellington, and
Okay.
everybody that says the wind is bad here needs to spend a little time in
Wellington.
because in a 4-year period, the place we had was hit by 3 tornadoes.
Oh,
So
interesting.
we got hit 2 years in a row, skipped a year, and then the third time we got hit was in a 4-year period. So yes, it blows terribly bad all the way down to Wellington.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And I, understand why you wanted to move to Wyoming, because there's just a safety and comfort here that still exists here.
Yep.
Although I think I saw somewhere some celebrity or somewhere online talk about how traveling to Wyoming feels like stepping back in time. And I, maybe that's true. I'm sure, especially for people that live in big cities, feel like they're stepping back in time when they come here. But for all of us, it's like a sigh of relief when we come home from wherever,
Yep.
So,
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
so did you, in terms of getting going in banking, how did that come to be? Was that your original career?
Was not my original career. I actually have a degree in construction management.
Okay.
From CSU.
Okay.
Um,
So you're a
so
ram,
I
or are
am a
you a
Rammy.
cowboy? Like
I am-
which
so
side are you on here?
I root for the Cowboys every game
Except-
The border war games.
Now,
Fine.
in fairness, while I was at CSU, I also worked as an athletic trainer.
Okay.
And through that whole medical connection, and then being in the Gulf, loved the trauma medicine side, but I didn't like having to work on kids, and I realized you don't get to choose that in trauma medicine. And
Sure.
so while I was still in school after the Gulf War, came back and I made a career change in college and went into construction management, worked for a big mechanical company out of Loveland for several years, but was a little frustrated with that process. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, you're great with numbers. I want you to sit down and have a conversation and look at financial planning." So I actually transitioned into financial planning at one of the worst times for somebody very young in age to be in financial planning, right as the internet bubble was getting ready to burst. And I would meet with people and they said, "What you're telling me sounds great. You sound really smart, but why don't you come back when you have a little gray and we'll talk." Maybe
A little gray.
I
we'll
think
do
people
some
say
invest-
that to financial advisors a lot.
And what I found was that the people who would listen at that time, they loved the idea of investing, but they were trying to get into a house. That was going to be their biggest investment. And at the time, there really wasn't any licensing for mortgage brokers. There was very little requirement. Lo and behold, a few years later, there's something else that happens.
Yeah, that's right. I
Called a
wondered.
bubble. But I was a licensed financial planner, and we started doing mortgage work because that's actually where most of the people had an opportunity to do
invest.
something financially.
Mhm.
And internet bubble hits, and it's pretty clear that that's not going to be a good option for a while. And so we focused more on the mortgage side, and I actually started doing mortgages up here. Rented an office space in the executive suites downtown on 17th.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I got started as far as in the industry here in Cheyenne. We had an office in Fort Collins as well, and the internet or the mortgage bubble hit, and realized we're probably not going to make it through this as a small company. And I actually got recruited to go to a bigger company, Countrywide Home Loans at the time. And I managed all of the offices in Wyoming, and then picked up the offices in Montana. We got bought out by Bank of America, and then we had a phone call an email for a mandatory phone call that we all needed to be on at 11 o'clock. And I reached out to my manager and I said, "You know anything about this call?" And I get a one-word response: "Yes." So,
That's all I'm giving you.
that doesn't give me a warm fuzzy feeling.
Mhm.
Another one-word response: "Sorry."
Oh.
I was like, "Oh my goodness."
Is that I mean, I worked for the state government before this. Do you think that's is that just how they do it in banking? Let people go? Or is that how they let people go in other places too?
To some extent, with HR rules about what you go into, I think there's some of that. And in fairness, Bank of America treated everybody incredibly well. They said, "This is no reflection on what you've done. We're giving you a 2-week working notice. You'll receive your severance packages in the mail tomorrow." We're like, "Yeah, right, it's Saturday." No, they were FedEx delivered on Saturday.
Wow.
I had just hired a new underwriter who had been with us 2 weeks, and even she was given 2 weeks of severance on top of the 2 working weeks. So, well, it wasn't ideal. There are companies that handle it a lot differently, so I can't complain about that. Um, Ironically, I had a lunch scheduled to meet with the management team and Nancy Knob at Jonah Bank. Nancy's a consummate professional, one of the best originators in the entire state, in the nation. And her and I would go back and forth, trying to get her to work where I was at. She was trying to get me. She told me, hey, take a look at this. I think you'd really like it. She'd already been there a couple of years. And lo and behold, I've got lunch to meet with them an hour
Oh my
after
gosh.
we've been told we no longer have a job. So
It was meant to be.
it's meant to be, and been there a little over 13 years now. So can't
Wow.
complain. It's been a great ride. It's a great community bank. We get a chance to do a lot of great things, and the mortgage side of it is really different for a small community bank. We're actually a pretty large entity in our overall production, and it gives us some exposure. And some of my background, having been a mortgage broker and then working for a big bank, I've gotten to see both the other sides of the industry, and I think that's why I can share some information that helps with what we're talking about.
Yeah. So I do have a circumstance and a reason why I asked Ward to be on today. But before that, I guess I'm wondering if you'd like to share just a little bit about the services that Jonah Bank provides. You know, what is it? What are the...
Why
Yeah,
Jonah Bank?
yeah, why Jonah Bank?
Why do we pick Jonah Bank?
You know, the really neat story behind Jonah Bank is it is a de novo bank, which means they started from scratch. And the whole thing behind Jonah Bank was they wanted to be able to help business and people in the community. And so, as a bank, you build a pool of assets that you then use to help different entities, whether it be personal loans, business loans. But their focus was going to be business, but they also wanted to be able to help people in the community. And so they started a mortgage department at the same time. And while they're not a huge consumer bank, you don't see a lot of advertisements from us.
For everyday
We're-
checking
right.
accounts, stuff like that.
We're more involved in the community, and that's how it was designed from the start. And so we put over $250,000 back into both communities last year. We've made a commitment as a community bank to put in 6% of our revenue each and every year back into the communities,
Wow.
which is a lot different than a lot of places because it's a set part of our budget. And that's what I think sets Jonah Bank apart, is that we really do want to be integral partners in our communities, and that carries over into what we do as far as providing products and services to our customers. And whether it's in the mortgage department where I'm at, or in the bank helping businesses, small startup businesses, that's something we excel at.
This is going to sound a little naive probably, but I don't think I realized until well into adulthood how much banks like yours really help coordinate business ventures. Like, you guys know the people that are out there considering, you know, they're maybe in their very preliminary stages. I'm thinking about, you know, starting a barber shop, or I'm thinking about starting a mechanic shop, or whatever the case is. And there's just this, you know, thought process happening. And then you guys are collecting everybody's dreams and then helping put like a puzzle together almost of, we're aware that this person wants to do this and this person wants to do this. Maybe they would both be really good housed over here or something like that. I don't think I realized to the extent that you guys are kind of sort of the puppets behind the curtain, I guess, and
Sure.
is maybe the best way to put that in terms of coordinating all of that. I tend to think of it very linear, like I want to start a business, I'm going to go to the bank, they're going to talk to me about it, I'm going to get approved or not, and then I'm going to start looking and blah, blah, blah. But you guys have, like I say, the big picture of everybody's dreams and help coordinate some of that between
even dreamers, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I think it helps being as involved in the community
Yes.
as we are. I think that's the one thing that stands out to find Jonah Bank is that almost every fundraising event has a table because we know how important it is to be involved at that level, but that gives us that opportunity to hear what people's dreams are. And you know, we're not perfect. We don't have a magic potion that everybody's going to get approved.
Sure.
But we do have a way to help people get where they want to. And sometimes that does take a little bit of work. But when it takes a little bit of work, the idea is that we want to see them succeed. Waving a magic wand and letting them get started with a high opportunity of failure is not a real good way to set people in motion in those cases. And so I won't say that there are people that get frustrated because we may have to say no, but we try very hard to provide the reasoning behind why we're saying no and what can you do to get where we can say yes.
Yes. I think, what was it? We've had other lenders on here that essentially the message is, it's not no forever.
Right.
It's no for today.
Right.
No for right now. But what do we got to do to make that happen? Yep. But I think people get discouraged for sure when they hear the no. I probably would too.
Part of it is we're in an instant gratification society.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that's hard to hear no, but sometimes it's for the right reasons.
We talk a lot on here what did we say? This is the 70th. This will be the 73rd or 74th episode. And we've had a lot of people talking about their jump stories, is what we call them. So when they're going to make the leap to move or to start a business or buy a house, whatever the case is, it always takes more time than you think it's going to. And number one, and number two, you should have started yesterday and not today.
And patience.
Patience, that's right. I think everybody that finally made their jump and made the leap, almost all of them said they wish they would have started at least 2 years prior. Yep. You know, there's always that. We tend to sort of stay where we're comfortable and fill ourselves with maybe some doubts or insecurities or whatever the case is. But really, if you just start walking, and I'm going to say it in faith, you know, putting one foot in front of the other and learning about, you know, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
So you got to get out there and figure out what it is that you don't know so that you can learn it and move forward.
Very true.
Yeah. So the reason why I asked Ward to be on here today is because I had a listing back in June, early June, with a couple that was actually moving to Colorado. I told them they were moving the wrong way. Everybody else moves from Colorado to here, but they were moving from here to there, although their reasons were really great to live near their kids and grandkids. So whatever. But anyway, I would probably do the same thing. But anyway, they listed their home and they were pre-approved to purchase a home down in Colorado. We're under contract on the home in Colorado. And we actually, their home went under contract within a day. So we were moving forward pretty quickly. And about halfway through the process, they learned that their mortgage had been sold. And she was a little frustrated, the homeowner was, because when that drops off your credit like that, your credit score can actually go down, not up, when something is paid off. Now, it didn't hurt her. It didn't hurt them in terms of the purchase of their property. But it set a series of things in motion, such as her house payment wasn't automatically taken out of her account. She had to, so in the middle of packing and moving and working with 2 different realtors and 2 different transactions and the whole thing, she is now dealing with the fact that her mortgage got sold. And she had to, coordinate, making her house payment and then sorting through her credit, what happened with her credit score, even though, again, it didn't hurt it, but it still was a big deal for her. And so we went through this process, and I actually was talking to someone at the title company because we had to do a payoff authorization. And then that wasn't, you know, it wasn't so simple because it had been sold. And I was at the title company explaining this to my officer, and she's like, actually, we had this happen with somebody else just last week. And so anyway, I'm not like complaining about it, but I want to like talk about it. Made me really think about what happens when mortgages get bought, because I've even had other clients that, if let's say there's a local lender and they're like 80% of our loans stay in house, but 20% get sold. And so then somebody, goes, they get a loan for their home and they think it's going to stay here locally, and then it doesn't, it gets sold. And you just hear some frustrations about it. And so this just seemed like a really good opportunity to talk about what that looks like. Sure. Why does it happen? How does it happen? And just sort of letting everybody know that this is a possibility if they have a home mortgage, what that looks like. And, is there really, other than it being sold in the middle of one of your transactions, is there really any harm in it? So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, so when you asked me to come on, I kind of went through some of, we do get lots of questions about that because, well, Jonah Bank is a Wyoming bank. We get that question all the time. Are you guys going to continue to service the loan? And well, we would love to be able to do that. The other piece of what we want to do is be able to help as many people as possible. Yep. Okay. And so to begin with, one, what is the average length of time a mortgage stays in place? That's one of the biggest things that creates why this all happens. So the average length of time that a mortgage stays in place is 7 to 8 years. So as a small community bank, if we were keeping all of those loans in-house in our mortgage department, we would run out of lending capacity within a very short period of time.
Because that's a lot of money.
Correct. Yeah. Just in relative terms, in the last 10 years, we've averaged roughly $150 million in mortgage loans alone. Not commercial loans, purely secondary market, residential 1 to 4 family homes. We've averaged about $150 million in loans that have closed each and every year. Well, we would have to be a giant bank,
sure,
to be able to continue along that line. And banks, as a rule, have to maintain reserves as well as a percentage of the loans that they have out at any given time in case those loans don't perform. So that adds to the amount of money that you need available. And for Jonah Bank, we wanted to be focused on helping small business, but we wanted to be able to help customers, homeowners buying a home, and trying to do both and keep all of that in-house wouldn't have been possible. So the secondary market is something that almost every entity uses. Mm-hmm. As I mentioned earlier, I worked for Bank of America, one of the largest banks in the entire United States, and we couldn't even say that we would keep the servicing when we did loans.
Right.
Because loans do get packaged and sold to free up assets at every level.
Yep.
So that's part of what drives why is there a secondary market, because those sit out there for a long time and it reduces the ability of any lending institution to continue to lend. The other part is what happens with a residential mortgage is the entire process is actually pretty tracked anymore, from the standpoint of every mortgage is on a residential property is recorded in what is called the Mortgage Electronic Registration System. It gets a unique number attached to it, and that is not only attached to the mortgage, which is recorded and is public record information, mm-hmm. but it is also on the note. The note is the promise to pay.
Sure.
Okay. So it is a way for people to keep track of what are the terms And so when a loan gets transferred, all of that information is out there. So it is scary to a lot of people that, hey, my servicing is getting transferred. I'm going to have to pay somebody else. But they cannot change the terms of that note or that promise to pay.
Right.
And there is a record of that. So it's not, there's no way around that. People complain quite often that, but my servicing got transferred and my payments changed. When the servicing changes, there's also a whole set of rules. We talked about rules for a lender to maintain reserves when they're doing lending. Servicers are required to make sure that they're not putting the borrower in a bad position by making sure that their escrow account is funded correctly. So when a loan gets transferred, that opens up a window for that new servicer to look at what is the escrow account, what is the balance in the escrow account, are there enough funds, what are the funds due that are coming out, and that more often than not is where the payment change comes from, but people associate it with, well, the new servicer changed my payment. Well, they may have, but more than likely they did it because there was likely a shortage in your escrow account.
Sure.
And you were getting into a situation where you were going to either see a really big change or be in a bind that there wasn't enough money to pay your taxes and your insurance as they came due. Because when a loan is transferred, if there's an escrow shortage, there's still an escrow shortage with the new
new one.
servicer.
Yeah.
And some people are waiting for everybody goes through that rebalancing of their escrow account or the escrow analysis. And servicers handle that at different times, but everybody goes through that process. And we get calls all the time. Hey, can you go through this paperwork with me? I don't understand what they sent me. They're giving me like 3 or 4 different payment options. I don't understand what this means. So it's at that escrow analysis time that it's telling you, what do you need to do? Do you need to put more money in? Some people get lucky and they get to reduce their payment. Doesn't happen very often, especially with insurance rates going up, taxes going up.
Yeah.
But that escrow analysis creates that window where they look at, do you have enough money in here? Are you going to be okay when the next tax payment or the next insurance payment comes due? And if not, then we need to make an adjustment. And that's usually what that payment change comes from, is not that they changed what the principal and interest portion was, because the principal and interest is controlled by the note or the promise to pay, and they can't change that.
Right.
It does make sense that they would do it when it gets transferred. If you transferred a new case to someone or a new something, you would make sure it's all good, review it before you take it over, make changes if you had to. I mean, that would make sense.
And that's why a lot of times it occurs at that transfer, and people get worried that something's changed, and nobody likes change, and my goodness, they're making me pay more than I should. So that transfer of servicing triggers a couple of other things that will probably help for what you were talking about. Anytime a pool of loans is going to be transferred, it is the requirement of the existing servicer and the new servicer to provide a document saying, hey, this is truly happening. So when we close a loan and the loan gets purchased by the investor, and we're no longer going to accept payments, we have to send a letter to them saying, you will no longer make payments effective this date to Jonah Bank. And at the same time, and we have to tell them who the new servicer is in that letter. And the new servicer also has to send them a letter with the contact information of how to go about getting payments set up and that whole process. Sometimes that is the missing piece, that people may get the letter that their servicing is being transferred, but we also get a lot of junk mail.
I was just thinking to myself, I wonder how many people really open their mail
Right.
so much anymore. I know for myself, I'm not the best at
I'm
opening
not
up
gonna
all
lie, I'm
my
not
mail.
either.
You know, it'll pile up on my desk or whatever the case is sometimes before I get, you know, a week or two or more can go by before I
hate
open
mail.
it. I know it is. It is, especially, I think we've talked about this at some point. I mean, getting like soliciting mail from local is not bad. Like I don't mind getting local businesses sending me mail, but when you're getting stuff from national companies or across the country or whatever, it's like, you know, or the political.
Right.
We're in the middle of political
this time
season.
of the season, yes. This time of the year.
Yeah.
But I do wonder how, you know, well, let me ask you this. How far in advance do they provide that notification?
That varies by servicer. But they're required to give you notice at least 15 days prior to your next payment being due.
That doesn't feel like a very long time.
No,
I would be screwed. All I'm thinking right now is I don't open the mail.
right.
So what happens? Does someone start calling you and telling you didn't pay your mortgage?
Well, the good part is in that transfer, there is a window of time where your payments, even if they are technically late, cannot be reported as late, because the servicing window gives you the ability to use that as your out. Hey, I didn't know.
Okay.
And so when your servicing gets transferred,
But you would know. The thing is what people say is, I didn't know I didn't pay my mortgage for, you didn't notice that didn't come out of your bank account?
Right.
I mean, that's when I would notice. My husband or whoever's watching everything we're buying.
The house payment didn't come out.
He would be like, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other part of the problem is that, okay, one, there's a huge push to eliminate mailed statements, right? So we all get the notices, hey, sign up
paperless.
for
Yeah.
electronic payment. Sign up for electronic invoicing. Well, when they have made that change that all communication will be electronic and they get another email, they don't go in and look at it.
Yeah.
And it's that notice that, hey, your loan is being transferred.
And you've accepted that you would look at it because you've accepted that
Correct.
form of.
Correct.
And then you kind of wonder too, like, you know, there's some things that are in my husband's name and some things that are in my name. My husband does not check his email. I mean, he has it and he has it on his phone and he looks at it every once in a while, but anything that's directly with his name on it is going to go to his email because he's the primary on whatever. And yeah, you're completely right. It is coming down to if you're opening your mail or you're opening your email and actually looking at what you're receiving.
And that even carries over to the younger people are.
Yes.
The less they really look at email.
Yeah.
My daughter's 25.
They don't
and it's
like it.
Did you check
Your
your email? I sent you something.
They're
I
like,
need
that's
you-"
not a thing we do.
Which is kind of crazy to me. I don't even know how I'd function without email. Like what other than
I'm not going to lie. I'm bad about emails. I just did it this morning. I told you I was late to that Realtor of the Year,
right.
Business Person of the Year, and they were like, they sent an email that it starts at 11. Oh, I thought it was 11:30.
Well, and we're
But
getting
didn't you check your email? No.
we're getting off subject just a little bit, but that's why subject line is so important, right, in an email. Because if let's say you receive emails from me really regularly, once a day, once every couple days, you're going to be like, I can look at hers later. But if it says emergency in the
Loan
subject line,
servicing change.
Right.
but automations are not going to do that for sure. And that is the importance. We talk a lot in my world around the importance of what you put into the subject line because they do sort of become like wallpaper. Emails do.
Does it happen a lot? I mean, obviously you don't know when it's going to happen because it's just whenever you decide to sell it. It seems I've never had it happen in the middle of a transaction. Can you stop it at that point? If she would have known about it? No. Okay.
But the thing is that there would have been at least two pieces of communication. One from the existing servicer, saying we're no longer going to be accepting payments. Here is your new servicer, and they have to give all of the contact information for the servicer in the exit letter and in the introduction letter. So there would have been at least two pieces of communication that would have helped.
I think
going
she
back
did.
Okay.
I'm assuming she did receive it. It's
Yeah.
just that it happened in the middle of a transaction. And because this woman was very meticulous about everything. And so she called me flustered because I didn't know right when it happened, but like a week had went by and she'd been dealing with all these things. And she's calling me, she's like, my loan got, changed. And I'm like, what?
Right.
Here we are. And the only thing that I think to myself, like when I bought a house, the last time I bought a house, the lender was very straightforward with me. Like your loan is going to get transferred, and this is who it's going to be. My last house, it was Chase to begin with, and then it moved over to Mr. Cooper. Now, the only thing I'll say is Mr. Cooper felt fishy to me because
It's not a name you would associate.
no,
I have literally never heard of it.
yes,
And yet they're one of the largest mortgage servicing companies in the United States.
yeah. And so at first when it happened, I'm
Yeah.
like, what's this Mr. Cooper?
Yeah.
I don't even get this. But then when your Chase starts
There
to
was a
shut down.
TV show, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, right?
Oh, right.
There you go.
But I think she knew the problem was, like you're asking if it could be stopped. It's almost, and this isn't anything you can do anything about, but it's almost like it would be nice if they would at least say, are you thinking about selling your home, in the next 3 months or the next 6 months or something like that, and give you some type of heads up that it's coming if you are in the middle of a real estate transaction. Now, did it hurt anything? Not really. Her, it just caused some extra steps and frustration in the middle of an already stressful situation. And I felt bad for her, but it would be nice that you would, 15 days doesn't feel like enough time, especially, if you are in a real estate transaction, there's literally nothing you can do about it. No.
Unfortunately, there's not.
No.
And it would be nice if that was a step that,
Yeah.
but a lot of times when that servicing, it feels like it's just your customer or just
Yeah.
one person, but a lot of times
Thousands.
there's
They sold a
thousands
whole book of them, or
Yes.
That's usually what's happening is
Yeah.
there's an entire
And can you
book of
imagine the
business
people that would be
was-
like, yes, I am going to sell my house in 6 months.
So you can't.
So you
sell
can't
it.
sell it. Or,
Right.
or
Yeah,
I changed
I'm
my
sure.
mind.
It is a very in that particular case, you really are just a number. You're a loan number or you're a whatever number in the system that you were talking about. It's just data,
Yeah.
right? Data being taken from this place to that place, and that's all it really is. But to the person that's affected, it's a little more personal than that.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure.
No, it's
Yeah.
it's definitely a personal thing, and hopefully giving a little bit more information as to why does it happen helps
Yeah.
people understand that, well, it's not necessarily ideal. It also is part of why you maybe got the loan you were able to get at the rate you were able to get it, because if it weren't for that secondary market, there would be a very few entities that could play in the mortgage world.
Yep. It makes
So-
it an option for more people to have a mortgage on a home.
And it creates competition, which helps bring rates down.
Down.
If you have a very small number of lenders that can participate in lending, especially, mortgages, most of them that we see today are a 30-year mortgage. Well, there aren't a lot of institutions that could have the wherewithal to say, what if they kept it the whole 30 years?
Yeah.
Not just 7 or 8. What if they kept it the whole 30?
Mm-hmm.
So it really is a better situation for customers that there is a secondary market, but it does create some of these types of hiccups, for no better description, but they're solvable.
Yeah. An analogy that's kind of roaming around in my head is that if you're a parent and you have $100,000 in your bank account and you've got 3 children all moving into vehicles at the same time, and you're going to buy them each, let's say, a $25,000 vehicle, and they got to pay you back. do you want, so $75,000 goes out the door, and now you've only got $25,000 in your bank account instead of the $100,000 in your bank account, and your children are going to slowly pay you back for the next 30 years. What do you want that? Do you want them to do that, or do you want them to go get a loan and pay you back for the car? Right? That's like, to me, it's
to replenish the money so you can lend it again.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really the gist of why we don't keep the mortgages that we do, is so that we can also focus on the small business customer that we're trying to help. And that's a critical part. That was how we founded Jonah Bank. And so we would be straying away from our core values if we said, oh, we're going to keep the mortgages.
Yeah.
The good part is when we do transfer and people do get those letters and they've got questions and they can't get a hold of the 1-800 number, they can come in and we'll help them go through. I think that's probably the piece that is missing in some cases.
Sure.
Unfortunately.
You go from one big company to another big company, or
And people use the online lenders and things like that, and they don't have a local representative to say, hey, I don't get this. Can you help me before? Can you help me answer this question?
Yep.
So
I think that's a great perspective, and it will definitely help me in explaining it to my clients, you know, as we're either going through the financing process, or if they call me a year later and they're like, my loan changed.
That's funny. I never thought it was a big deal.
I
don't know if I've had anyone ever be like really mad about it.
I had one client call me a few months afterwards, frustrated that her loan got moved. So literally all in the last year,
but
I've
also they usually would call the lender, not me. I would hope. I mean, I'd be like, I didn't do it.
It is a common question.
Yeah.
I mean, as a lender, it's a common question. And I understand the reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
But we try to explain what we've done here today.
Yeah.
And explain that this is why we don't keep them in-house. And most people are comfortable with that and understanding the whole process that we laid out today, and also knowing that we're still going to be here and we'll help answer those questions. That helps ease that concern.
Well, it's a very legitimate reason. Yeah. And a good, wholesome reason, right, to continue to invest in the community. And so that makes it very easy for us as realtors to explain to clients as we're going through the process. So I appreciate you taking the time to do that.
You bet. No, and I appreciate you guys inviting me in to. I asked my originators if they wanted to, and they were like, no, this one's all yours. No, they didn't want to have to describe all of this.
Oh, okay. I was
they would love to come
why
down
don't they
and,
want to come and chat about something else?
They want to. They're more than willing to come back.
Okay.
They just did not want to have to tackle this topic. They said, no, that one's on you.
Oh, that's nice of them.
I'm like,
okay, good. I was like, it's not that they're.
No.
We have had several. I mean, I respect it if you don't want to come talk on camera and be recorded, because there are some people that are like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Tracy Page is one. I'm working on her.
Yeah, we'll get her in here one of these
She's
days.
like, no. I'm like, yes.
Okay.
Well, we do appreciate it. And one of the things that we try to do is, as we're encountering, situations in our transactions, then that we address it here in the podcast, because we think other people are going to have those same questions. And just because this has come up now a couple times for me, and specifically for my listing in June, I wanted to have somebody come on and talk about it. And I think it's all makes complete sense. And for me, it'll make it easier to explain. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. So Lindee and I always have a question that we like to ask all of our clients. And mine is, what is your favorite thing about Cheyenne?
My favorite thing about Cheyenne has to be the volunteerism. That it doesn't matter what organization you're a part of, there are people who are willing to jump in and help you accomplish what you want to try to do. And that really sets Cheyenne apart. It sets Wyoming apart to some extent in general, but I would say Cheyenne more so than even other parts of the state. And I might get some grief from my partners in Casper.
But Casper's pretty philanthropic for sure.
Casper does a good job, but I really think that Cheyenne, it is something across every business every demographic, people are willing to jump in and help. And that really is one of the reasons that my wife and I said we want our kids to grow up in that kind of environment. And so it's something that thankfully in the 20 years that I've been here, has it changed a little bit? Yes. But it is still by far much better than other areas of the country. So
It's worth the wind.
absolutely. Absolutely.
We talk about how everything's a trade-off,
Yes.
and wind is a trade-off in a lot of our discussions.
Yep.
So,
Mhm.
well,
And
anyway,
then
that's awesome.
I ask all of our guests, if you could buy real estate anywhere in the world, where would it be and why? Money's no object. You just have all the money.
Money's no object. Wow. Well, I'd start here because we love it, but it would probably have to be the Cayman Islands.
Ooh,
That
that's
would
a
be
new one.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you been there before?
My wife and I celebrated our honeymoon on Grand Cayman Island, and 30 years later, we're still together. So
So it's good luck.
I would say it's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
that's
I
awesome.
bet it's so beautiful there
Yeah.
too.
Great scuba diving, great
Mhm.
snorkeling,
Oh,
wonderful food, lots of sun.
makes me want to go there.
Mhm. I'm not ready for summer to be over.
You know, I am not ready for winter, but I'm ready for the heat. You know, that 90+ degree heat is a little too much for me.
Yeah.
And my this is completely off subject, but I mean, my hair has been a complete mop for the last month with the humidity and finally yesterday I went in to see Michelle. She was chatting with me actually about you and your mom and Krista. But anyway, I was like, my hair was just like a Barbie doll out to here. And I'm like, I cannot handle it anymore. And she's like, we can fix that. And I'm like, thank you, because the heat is killing me.
Mhm.
So anyway, that's a long ways around on that. But
Well, if somebody wants to get a mortgage or a business loan or anything, where can they find Jonah Bank? I mean, we know, but
Yeah. So we've got two locations. We've got our location on Story, 205 Story Boulevard, and then I'm going to screw this up, 1315 Capitol. Might have said that address wrong, but it's on Capitol. You
Okay.
can't
Okay.
miss us.
okay.
Right next to Starbucks.
Yes.
oh, we
Yep.
like Starbucks.
Yep.
Awesome. And a website.
As this is the great part, is it's Jonah.bank.
Oh,
So, as a financial institution, it is not jonahbank.com anymore. It's jonah.bank.
That's
So
awesome.
ooh,
JONAH.
interesting.
Yeah. Gives us a little bit more security from a web standpoint.
Sure.
And those are our locations in Cheyenne. We also have two locations in Casper, one on 1st Street and one on 2nd Street. I'm going to butcher the addresses. 777 West 1st Street. And I'm not even going to attempt the 2nd Street address.
So I'm guessing on the east side of town, west and east.
West, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna say first and second. You surely aren't next door to each other, so
Nope.
must be east and west.
Yep.
So awesome. So thanks so much for being on today.
Absolutely.
Yes,
it was a
thank
pleasure.
you.
And for all of our listeners, if you are looking to buy or sell, as you know, Lindee and I are realtors here at Peak Properties. You can find us at www.sellcheyenne.com, as well as all of our social media channels, and of course, Beyond the Front Door podcast on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts. Have a great day.
Yes. Thank you.
Yep. All right, we just need to get a selfie real quick
Oh, okay.
for our YouTube video.
Okay.
Whether you plan to buy, sell, or invest in southeastern Wyoming, turn to Peak Properties. Family and veteran owned and operated, we work diligently for you. Unlike other larger companies, we take time to learn about you, understand your specific real estate needs, and remain easily accessible if you have any questions.
Being a veteran and family-owned and operated company means a high level of commitment, trust, and loyalty. Our family culture sets us apart. We work as a team. We develop not just professional, but personal relationships with our clients. When you choose Peak Properties, you become part of our real estate family.
Looking to relocate to Wyoming or just move across town? Peak will be there for you every step of the way. Recognized for excellence and dedication in the real estate profession, we're proud to be one of the most trusted and knowledgeable names in our industry. Let Peak help you find your dream home or investment property today. Our agents will make sure you're informed and listened to as they guide you to fulfilling your real estate goals. Reach out today.
We have sold and purchased several homes through Peak Properties, and each time I've been impressed. They are great about guiding us in the right direction and always being in our corner.
Peak Properties. Let our family show you the way home.